The markings that you're going to see almost every time when I set a problem up is I'm going to rewrite everything as a fraction. So both of these fractions in the numerator are already represented as fractions. In the denominator, I want to represent that as a fraction, so I just put it over a 1. Okay. What I can now do is combine my numerator into one single fraction. So I have to look to see what the LCD factors are. So I know I have to have an x plus h. And in fact, this first fraction has two of those factors. So I have to have an x plus h squared as one of my sets of LCD factors. And then looking at the second fraction, I also need an x squared. Now, the fact that if you expand this out, x squared is a term of this binomial expansion, that doesn't mean that it's a factor. So you have to have that x squared as a separate factor. Okay, so those are your LCD factors. What you can now do is take the numerator of your first fraction and multiply it by any LCD factors that are missing from this fraction's denominator. So it has the x plus h squared, it's missing x squared. Do the same thing with the next fraction. So minus a 1, the next fraction's numerator, times any LCD factor that's missing from its denominator. This one's missing the binomial square. Okay, so what we can do right here is we can simply work to simplify our numerator. So we have an x squared minus, and we have this whole quantity. When we square the binomial, we're going to take the first term and square it. We're going to double the product of the terms, so 2xh, and then we're going to square the last term. And then if we distribute our negative through, we get a negative x squared, a minus 2xh, and a minus h squared. So what I'm doing here now is I'm just going to combine down my columns. The x squared and negative x squared cancel. And my numerator simplifies to negative 2xh minus h squared. And to completely simplify this in our fraction form, I'm going to remove any common factors that I can here. And to be consistent with what I expect to see, okay, there's a common factor of h that comes out. You also want your leading coefficient to be a negative, so we're going to pull out a negative h. That leaves a positive 2x and a positive h when you remove that common factor. And then our denominator stays just as it was here. Okay, so here's our numerator, all written as one single fraction. Okay, now we're going to divide by this denominator, okay, but dividing is equivalent to multiplying by the reciprocal. So if I were to take this simplified form, I'm just rewriting what I have over here. And if I were to invert and multiply, my h moves to the denominator, the 1 moves to the numerator. I can now cancel common factors. That's the only set of factors that cancel. And so now as I multiply across the top, I have negative quantity 2x plus h all over x squared times x plus h squared. H canceled from my denominator, so I do have a domain restriction. H cannot be 0. And so that would be my simplified form.